My name is Lori Michaels, and this is Victoria Hall. And we are here tonight with Rachel Ventura, who is running for Illinois' 11th district. Is that right? Am I saying it right?
11th yes. Congressional district, yep.
11th congressional, great. And Victoria and I have been volunteers with Marianne Williamson's presidential campaign, and now we are working as a grassroots effort in her Repair America movement and are interviewing and supporting candidates that she supports. And she is very impressed with you, and we would love to learn more about your stances so that we understand how you align with Marianne's pillars and why she's so impressed with you. I mean, I have my opinions, but I would love for everybody else out here to get to hear more about your platform.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we have in common. Obviously wanting to make sure we have a sustainable planet for the future. My background is both as an actuary and a naturalist. And so I'm very concerned about the direction of our planet and the animals and humans who rely on it. I also, when I was an actuary, I worked in health insurance. And so I would like to make sure we have health care. I do believe it's a human right, and the way that our system has gone about exploiting people who are sick and dying just for profits is really, it's criminal is really what it is. And so we want to make sure that everyone has health care. And one of the things I really liked about Marianne is that she took a holistic view of healthcare, that it's not just going to the doctor, but it's the foods we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe. You know, I think that's so important, how that affects us, our everyday life, our quality of life, but then also how we interact with our community. I am just west of Chicago. And so I have both an urban and a rural area in my congressional district. And so regenerative farming is really important to me. And so I'm also supporting the Green New Deal. Not only does it have healthcare and a federal jobs guarantee, but also it includes things like making our homes energy efficient, moving to electric vehicles, regenerative farming, and of course, tackling the climate crisis by getting off of fossil fuels. So those are some of the highlights, but I also so Joliet is my hometown, and it is a prison town. And so we see the fallout of the mass incarceration here and how people are exploited at cheap labor once their time is served. Their record doesn't go away, and those people are then exploited. And we need to fix that. We also have undocumented citizens here who are going through some of the same situations. We have a large warehouse district here because we have the largest inland port in the world. And so 63% of all products in the United States goes through our county, and 3.65% of GDP goes through our county. And so all these warehouses are exploiting undocumented immigrants. They're exploiting people who have felonies on their record. And again, it's criminal. We need to make sure that we're treating the people the way we want to be treated, that we have a federal jobs guarantee, that we're paying $15 minimum wage, that we're allowing people to unionize, and all of these things are interconnected, and that creates a wealth gap in America. Yeah, so those are some of the things I've been fighting against. And I know that Marianne was big on reparations. In Will County here, we did pass, the state of Illinois passed the legalizing cannabis. And we've been using our taxpayer dollars. They're going into a separate fund, but I've been fighting for those taxpayer dollars to be used for reparations here. I know the state has a program where dollars could go towards that, but not everybody. The state program is if you want to have a business in cannabis, but not everybody wants to have a business in cannabis who may have been affected by marijuana in the past. And so we want to make sure there's opportunities for people to go to school, for them to do other businesses, maybe to get their fines paid off so their record can be expunged. And that's something I've been fighting for here too.
Well, wow. It's not a mystery why Marianne supports you at all. One of her big things was help people thrive. And it sounds like you are absolutely on board with that and everything you've just talked about, not only the planet thrive, but the people in your community and around.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things that Marianne says a lot is that no amount of private charity can compensate for a lack of social justice. And I know you have a big background in charity work, working for nonprofits, just like Marianne. And I'm wondering what kind of stumbling blocks you ran into in that experience and how that inspired you to get into politics.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of charity work tends to end up being Band-Aid fixes. You know, like you can help one or two people, but when there's thousands of people who need help, it feels like you're never getting ahead, you know, that you're a little pebble on the beach and there's all these pieces of sand. And so how do we get ahead? Well, we need to change the system, right? We need to make sure that their policies are fair for everyone, and that people who have been cheated or left behind in the past have an ability to catch up and close, whether it's that generational wealth gap, whether it's education opportunities. And we need to make sure that people can thrive in the environment that they've chosen, but also to make sure that the world is creating a positive environment for them.
Wow, it's amazing.
It is. You are a fireball, man. We talked to somebody else earlier today, and we said, you know, you are a badass, and you are a badass.
Thank you.
Marianne knows how to pick them, right?
Yes, she does. She does.
For me, it's just my parents have always taught me the golden rule: treat people the way that you want to be treated. I teach my children that as well. You know, I currently serve on the Will County Board here in Illinois, and I think of all the policies through that lens, and I plan to legislate from Congress that way too. That maybe I haven't necessarily experienced something, but how would it feel, you know, if I was in the other person's shoes? And I think if all of our Congress people were doing that, we would have a very different world right now. But unfortunately, that's not how most individuals govern. And the job of representative is to represent. So I may not personally have gone through all the things that my constituents are going through, but I need to be there to hear them, to understand them, and so that I can better represent them in Congress.
Yeah.
Empathy is a really good quality to have, I think, in a politician, right? You mentioned your children, and I know that you have some education policies on your website that you would probably want to talk about.
Yes, so I am a supporter of fully funding our education from pre-K all the way through college. You know, if we want to compete with the rest of the world, then we need to meet where the rest of the world is at, and that is a college education. And we need to not saddle our next generation with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt where they can't compete, they can't create new innovations, new businesses, because they're too busy working a dead-end job paying off their student loans. And so I do think that's important. But even on the pre-K end of that, there are so many families right now who are struggling, and parents have to decide, do I go to work or do I pay for daycare? You know, and that should be a choice that the individual makes, not because of financial needs, but because they want to work, or they want to supplement their care of their child for some other reason. And too many times I've heard moms say, I wanted to go back to my career, but I couldn't because the financial burden of paying for daycare didn't make financial sense. So I just became a stay-at-home mom. Now, I was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, and I think that is a fabulous career, but I also understand the importance of getting out there and creating, you know, identity outside of your children. And so again, someone should be able to make that choice because it's a choice they're making for their family, not because they're forced to make it because of financial reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, Bill Foster is in your district. He's an incumbent that's been there for a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to address that at all?
Yeah, so it'll be about almost 10 years by the time the general election rolls around. And, you know, some of the frustrations is that he continues to use our taxpayer dollars for endless wars and corporate bailouts. Whereas I'm advocating that our taxpayer dollars goes towards education, healthcare, good paying jobs, renewable energy. These are all things that are going to help our families day in and day out. You know, bombing Yemen is not helping families, it's destroying families. Paying for Trump's border wall and his detainment camps down there, again, separating families. This is not where our taxpayer dollars should be going to. And unfortunately, Mr. Foster takes a lot of corporate PAC money. He's taken money from the fossil fuel industry. So even though he's a scientist, he's supporting a fossil fuel bailout bill called the Use It Act to the tune of $50 million. He has taken $600,000 from pharmaceutical and big insurance. So it's no wonder he's not supporting Medicare for all. And he sits on financial services, and he's taken $1.4 million from big banks and hedge fund managers. So the banks he's supposed to be overseeing are lining his campaign funds. And so that's not the type of representative that we need. We need someone who's going to be fighting for American families, fighting against Trump's atrocities and making sure that our taxpayer dollars are being invested back into our communities.
So no strings attached still.
That's right. Still no strings attached. I'm not taking any corporate dollars. I've signed the No Fossil Fuel Pledge. I've signed the Patients Over Profit Pledge, because I do believe that we have to get rid of these bought and paid for politicians. And that's not just for one party or the other. It's both parties. And we need to start messaging that our enemy, isn't just Donald Trump. Right? Our enemy is these corporations of special interests who continue to divide us, who create the larger wealth gap, and ultimately siphon money from the middle class and working class so that our lives and our quality of life deteriorate.
Definitely. That's exactly what Marianne says, and that's exactly what we've been telling people. And it's so great to see all of these great candidates coming in and running for Congress that Marianne has endorsed, and that I know that Blue America endorses you, and I know that there's the Chicagoland candidates that you're friends with and that you all support each other. You want to talk about them a little bit?
Yes. So Robert Emmons is running in the district next to me in the 1st district, and Anthony Clark is running in the 7th, and Marie Newman is running in the 3rd, and I'm running in the 11th. And all of Anthony's just one district removed, but the rest of us, our districts all touch one another. We're all progressive Democrats. We've all endorsed Bernie Sanders, and we're all challenging incumbents who are entrenched. And so Illinois is a hard state when it comes to politics. There is very much a machine here, and it's hard to get past that. And that's why it is so important to knock doors. Before the call, I know we were talking about how many doors I knocked in my last race and how many doors I had to knock in this race. Because we're not taking campaign contributions, it is harder to get that message to the people. We don't have $1 million to run TV ads and send out constant mailers. So we rely on the help of volunteers knocking doors. And in this race, we've knocked over 20,000 doors to date, and we have 6 days left. So we have, or maybe we're down to 5 at this point because it's at nighttime, but we have a robust walking plan for these next 5 days. And if anyone is in the area and wants to help any of those candidates out in the Chicagoland area, knocking doors, phone banking, and of course, sending a contribution, my email or my website is electventura.com. I'm also all over social media under #electventura. But those are the things that are going to change our democracy, is getting people involved. It has to be people powered. It can't be money powered.
I was going to ask you about that, and you already told me, because I've seen a lot of great testimonials by your volunteers. They seem very dedicated, and they believe in you. So that actually speaks a lot for you. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I just totally left my mind. Can we edit this out?
You would like to make sure people hear that we haven't asked you, or you haven't shared yet?
I think the important thing is to encourage every voter to get out. There are so many people who are apathetic to our voting process. And when the one place right now in the world or in this country where everything is incredibly equal is in the ballot box. When you go in there, no matter how old you are, your skin color, your gender, your vote is equal to everybody else's vote. And the amount of messaging and money that is spent to dissuade you to vote, to tell you your vote doesn't matter, is really astronomical. And it's time we have to change that. Future generations are getting on board, but my generation, and those who are older than me, there's a gap there where they don't turn out. And we need those individuals turning out, but not just turn out to vote aimlessly, get engaged, get educated, and make sure you're voting for a change, because it didn't matter if Republicans or Democrats were elected in my 38 years on this planet, my quality of life has continued to deteriorate, and other working families' lives have continued to deteriorate. And so it's time that we actually put in public servants and not these bought and paper politicians. And that's only going to happen when people turn out to the polls in mass numbers and vote for something new. So please vote for me. Please vote for Bernie Sanders. Please vote for Robert Emmons, Marie Newman, Anthony Clark, and so many more people who are running across this country from coast to coast.
Awesome. I know that you were talking about that you understood the disappointment of Elizabeth Warren's supporters and why they should vote for Bernie if they so believe.
Yeah. Well, I think so it's not a secret that when Elizabeth Warren first announced that I was excited about her campaign and I was helping work and organize for her. Of course, when Bernie then announced, I was very torn and I supported the progressive movement. I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders in 2016. And I know it's heartbreaking for women to feel like they're not being represented, as we saw one woman after another drop out of the presidential race. And I know in my lifetime, I want to see a woman president. And I think the pinky promise that Elizabeth Warren gave to so many little girls weighs heavily on her. And I know this is going to happen. And it's frustrating to see that we have to work twice as hard sometimes to get the same recognition as our male counterparts. And I do think that's changing. And the elections that we've seen, or these campaigns that are running, it's creating a dialogue across this country, and that's one of the things that is needed. And I know even on our own race, we've had a lot of gender discussions on how do we run things, or what does it mean to be a female candidate, what is expected of a man versus a woman, and how do we break down some of those double standards. And so we are growing as a nation, and with that comes growing pains. And so we are going to see people who are hurting and who are disappointed and who don't feel represented. But a vote for Biden is not going to change that. A vote for Bernie will, because he wants publicly financed campaigns. So if we want people of color and women and people who have been marginalized in this country to have a chance to represent their communities, we need to make sure that there isn't a financial burden there to do so. And the other thing I've talked about too is the fact that one thing that Trump has given us is the fact that his atrocities are so in our face, we can't ignore them. And so when we see kids in cages, we know that's not okay, and people are getting engaged then. My fear is that some politicians like Biden may get in and have policies that may still affect people of color and women and the poor, but it won't be in your face. It'll be easy to ignore. And so then we just push that can a little bit further down the road, and it's not okay. Whereas Bernie Sanders is willing to come out and say, these things are not okay. He will put them in our face in a good, positive way, that there are things we have to change, and he will work with us to change those. So I am encouraging every woman out there, every man out there who is supporting Elizabeth Warren to get involved with Bernie Sanders, because a vote for Biden is not going to change the things that we want to see in this world. A vote for Bernie gives us that opportunity.
And a vote for Rachel does too, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to work hard as I've ever worked my whole life, because I have two little girls who are depending on me to make sure that we have a sustainable planet, and I can't let them down.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you so much for everything you do. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And good luck next week.
Thank you so much.
We will be with you.